Hi, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural edition of the DeNovo Learning Interview. We are very pleased to have for our first guinea pig, Seth Price, founding partner of Price Benowitz, which is a rapidly growing law firm operating in the DC metro area, and also founder of Blue Shark Digital, which is one of the most innovative legal marketing companies that we've come across, and we've worked with a lot of them. So we're very happy to have you here today, Seth. The format for this interview is 4 questions, 15 minutes. And we want to, get with industry leaders and get your take on what's new and interesting, what's going on as we try and navigate this really rapidly changing legal and business climate. Uh, so with that first question, focusing on law firms for a minute. We've all been through a strange time the last 18 months, right? And so I want to get your take on the state of play now for law firms. So what do you think, in the light of what we learned during the pandemic, the sort of economic effects of it, and the unusual economic recovery that we're experiencing now, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that law firms face going forward?
Great question. Honor to be here and to be the first guinea pig in your series. It's been a challenging 20 months. It really has, and I think that just got back from AAJ and got the lay of the land from the plaintiffs bar, and I speak to people across the B2C landscape. Right now, I think that law firms are thrilled that things are coming back, so that for the non-plaintiffs bar, those days of lack of velocity where people weren't going out and getting arrested and doing the things that would create cases, the good news is that's turned around. So if you made it through that period and PPP may have been helping to equalize, that's awesome. I think the plaintiffs bar, for the contingency folks, we still have another sort of couple hiccups to come, in the sense that there was a doldrums where the sort of fee-for-service non-contingency folks really had a hard time, some in Q4, some in Q1, but that with those drop in cases, that won't be felt by the plaintiffs firms for a number of quarters. And it may smooth out where it's not as dramatic because stuff will settle over time. But I think that there was a dearth of cases, and that those that are sort of watching, that it's hard to make that flow up. It may be smoothed over, but it's going to be smoothed over at some sort of a reduced volume from what people were used to in the past. Going into COVID, I can speak for my own firm, we were jamming, as many people were, and it was sort of, we reset, we pivoted, we did all sorts of things. But I think that those in the plaintiff's practice probably have some unfortunate numbers coming, as the lack of signings is then going to be apparent in revenue of settled or litigated cases.
Yeah, we let me ask you just quickly a corollary question to that. We've heard from a lot of folks that judges are starting to cram trial dates onto the calendar. So, I mean, I just wonder whether we're kind of between a rock and a hard place here, right? People pivoted, like you said. Some people shrank their staff. So, in the immediate near future, with the dates and the judges being aggressive with scheduling, you've got sort of an overhead problem. You got to bring in more staff. You got to grow quickly to be able to handle the workload there. But then there's this revenue dip coming down the road.
No, absolutely. And staff, that sort of, I'll answer it in several ways, because my next thought was space requirements. Who's coming back? Who's been, I just had an employee of mine who I pushed to get the shots, and he didn't, and he's out for the week with COVID now. And so we have not gone through. Delta variant is out there. Last conference people were at there now, people have come back with testing positive. Thankfully, for those that have, usually it's not a fatal or very serious for those people that have been inoculated, but a lot, half our country hasn't been, and people that seem like rational players, vendors in our circle who refuse to get it. I don't get it. So as a business owner, it's very frustrating. I would think that We're lucky to have gotten through the way we did. We're amazing that science delivered us a cure this quickly, and for people not to, for this to be politicized, insane, and for people involved with businesses not to do it, even symbolically, to sort of stand on a pedestal and say, I'm not going to do it, just means that we're that much further away from having a true return to normalcy. So judges cramming, I think there's two different ways to look at that. I know that my own trial attorneys are freaking out because they're late 2021 into 2022 is insane, but the defense is no different. And I feel like the defense got giddy. They realized they could, they want to bill their hours. At the same time, there was instruction, I think at some point on larger cases, to kick the can. They're going to be in a position, they're going back to the carriers and saying, hey, we can't, this is untenable. I can't have 3 trial dates on the same day. Something's got to give. And so we're now seeing, and I think this is true across the country, we're now seeing a greater velocity of things settling that were dragging. And that, it took a trial date to force settlements in certain areas. My perception is that what we have now is an accelerated need, not by the plaintiffs who are freaking out, but by the defense, who could not withstand the volume that they were facing. And they're going back and saying, you better put some real money on the table and make some of this stuff go away, or we're going to collapse.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's turn to the positive for a second, and tell me what you think, in the light of everything, is the biggest opportunity for firms in the near future.
Look, lots of resetting. We're reevaluating real estate needs, where people are, whether we can attract people from other parts of the country or around the world. I see it from two eyes: from the Price Benowitz side, as well as from the other side, which is the digital marketing side. And so I see all these different perspectives. Digital marketing during this time has been on fire. Blue Shark, the demand has never been greater. TV pricing and eyeballs on TV, I think, has gone up. So the cost per case on TV has gotten extraordinary, and that has just left for incredible opportunities in the digital space. The different mindset shift, I think, was before people saw like organic digital as almost free. You pay X amount a month, and that, now when you look at it on a cost per case basis, it's pretty amazing to see what that the organic side, at least, whichever is SEO dead, is now delivering cases at a cost per lead that is now incredibly, the delta between organic and TV, for example, and paid, is starting to get to the point where people are saying, wow, there is real value there. It's not like, hey, this is other, but if I look at how much I'm paying for organic and how much I'm getting, the numbers are dramatically better than they are seeing in other areas. Not that TV is dead, and not that paid search is dead. I mean, LSAs have been the story of the pandemic, where Google rolled out this new product that was sort of a gift to plaintiffs' lawyers.
Local service ads.
The local service ads, right, yeah. Which were clunky at first to get through. Now are there. Now we can't get enough of them into the pipeline. But there's just not enough inventory to buy as much. But the bottom line is, business is back. People are looking for places to, put their media dollars. TV, with the added expense, has pushed a lot of eyeballs to digital. We're all on our phones and screens more and more. So it's been a great time to be in digital marketing. And I think organic is sort of maybe the group that had been sort of like that other. And now when people are like, oh, wow, this other stuff is so expensive, where can I get more? They're looking more and more to organic as a place to help make sure that the cases come in at a cost-effective basis going forward.
So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about digital for a second. And, I want to pick your brain. Obviously, it's been a dynamic situation. There's been a lot of change, a lot of development, some of which you touched on already. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the distinction between organic and other in the digital realm, and sort of what do you think the number one lesson from the last year and a half is for firms when it comes to digital marketing?
Oh, wow. I think, look, it's always, you got to be on top of what's going on. We've had the local service ads roll out. That was an opportunity. Had to jump in quickly. We've had a number of core algorithm updates that have pushed for greater quality, which I think means, continue that, stay the course, don't take the shortcuts, focus on high quality content and authoritative links. I think that it's, diversification, making sure you have multiple, irons in the fire. But I think that what we've seen in the short to medium term, and I think will continue for the foreseeable future, has been following best practices has paid off. And that for the most part, the shortcuts have not. There are times when you're frustrated because somebody is taking a shortcut and having a short-term win. But what we've seen over time is that those people that have sort of focused on fundamentals, that those things have paid dividends. And when the eyeballs are there, which they are now, people are back, they're living life, they're driving, they're going to work, they're interacting in all different ways, causing a whole variety of needs in the legal spectrum, that we now have those people back, and that those that spent time on digital, again, whether it being positioning yourself for paid or whether it be building out your organic, are definitely seeing the benefits now. Like, we spent a lot of time, fighting over real estate during the pandemic that was less effective because there were less people out there. That effort is paying off now that the people are back and the volume is back.
Right. I mean, nothing like a crisis to force innovation and attention to detail, right?
Absolutely. And, look, I'm going to give a shout out to what you guys are doing. Part of what has been the biggest sort of, and you alluded to this, we contracted somewhat. There was the media panic, and then PPP came and sort of said, okay, we're going to get through this. Originally, we wanted to get through 4 months. It turns out it was a lot longer. Bottom didn't drop out, but figuring out staffing has been a huge issue coming back. And the idea of what you need to cover those cases, is that great question, is how quickly are we going to be forced to litigate these cases? What do you need there? I can speak to my own law firm. I feel very blessed that we are now in the best shape we've ever been in. We've attracted talent, that at the end of COVID, there was enough movement in the market that we were able to acquire some incredible people, and put ourselves in great stead. I think at the bottom end of the market, there's been a problem. And I don't know how much this affects the law firms, but it's definitely a truism across the economy, which is, the extended unemployment benefits and COVID bonuses, or whatever you want to call it, have made it very hard, that the service industry is not there. And to a certain extent, that's forced us to look nationally and internationally to fill seats and pieces that I might not be able to get locally. That
Right.
the combination of local minimum wage, which is long overdue, but is now there, combined with increased unemployment benefits, meant that there were just a lot fewer people at the bottom part of our work pyramid, not in the market, and that we were fighting for it. So having great partners that can help you place people when needed, and thinking creatively about what you can do to get work done. If I look at what my workforce looks like today versus pre-pandemic, that ripping the Band-Aid off and realizing that I don't need everybody under the roof for a bunch of reasons. One, rent is expensive. Two, there are benefits to having people in house, lots of them. We have most people back now, but the idea that we have some incredible talent. One of my intake sort of managers, a woman who is just tremendous, was hired remotely and works remotely from New Jersey, several hours from our office, but has really something we never would have been able to have, a manager in a remote situation, and she has kicked ass. And I think that thinking creatively, that part of the benefit of COVID has been that we don't look at stuff as linearly, and that we are able to, look at different assets and opportunities in ways we never could have before.
I think, I've told people before, and I believe this is true, that law is the most conservative of professions in terms of sort of introspection and change. And it seems like it would take something like this to cause a sort of full-scale reassessment of the way that we do basic things like training lawyers, hiring staff, working with vendors, etc. So I find that very interesting. Let me, for the last couple of minutes that we have here, though, get you to talk more about digital marketing. What is, at this moment, the number one thing that lawyers and law firms should know about what's going on in the digital space?
I think that the eyeballs there are so tremendous that the fundamentals of content and links more important than ever. I think what's happened during COVID has been during this period is that Google has really put the reviews into the algorithm so that it's not just enough to have great content and links or to pay the most for ads, but that social proof has become super important. And that it's frustrating. It is not easy. It's another sort of skill set that's needed in house, but that the leader of the firm ignores that at their peril. Like if you are the captain of the ship, and I know I can speak for myself. Over the years, I've had positives, I've had negatives, but the idea that somebody that it is a important it is an important piece of the firm culture, and from leadership, that this is not just like when you get around to it. I have delegated this to my intake department, and I got to tell you, that has not always been a great thing. It's fine until it's not fine. The good news is if you're doing a good job and you're doing your digital right and your marketing is crushing it, then all of a sudden phone calls go up, and then all of a sudden your intake people are like, well, I'm too busy to do anything else. So it's a combination of motivating staff, not easy. I wish if we could do an entire hour on how to motivate staff and never even and again, I can't even profess that I'm amazing at it, but it's every single touch point. How do you looking at that as your digital currency? And that if the leadership, and this is, look, as a vendor, this is true, as a law firm, this is true. How do you tell your story, to sort of quote the Hamilton musical, who's going to tell your story? And the idea being, if that is something that I think during COVID, Google has doubled down on, and that the consumers have, that we take for granted, that when we book hotels, when we pick restaurants, that we're looking at ratings. Amazon, how often are you looking at like who has critical mass on reviews and decent score? And it's just there are times you look at nothing else. And so, yes, making sure you do everything else, that you're making the phones ring, but that you have somebody with leadership at the firm who has their eye on this piece, because it is now a piece of the digital strategy.
Yeah, I mean, rankings driven search is something that we do every day. I mean, you can't keep up with everything that's out on Netflix, for example. You don't look at the menu and browse through everything. You search, what are the best movies on Netflix right now, and you get a list that's driven by
And you
ranking.
get that, and then you end up, I don't know if you ever do this, but I have Rotten Tomatoes open. I crowdsource before I watch a movie with my wife, and
Right.
if it's not above a certain number, we're not watching it.
Yeah.
And that's saved a lot of time. If half the world doesn't love the movie, there's a good chance you won't as well. And I think that's similar here. So it's continuing. Look, you got to have a good mousetrap. You got to deliver good service and everything else. That's first and foremost. You can't fake that, but making sure that somebody tells that story of what great service you are providing.
Right. Absolutely. And people definitely carry over those heuristics for how they find things in one category to another when they're looking for service. Well, Seth, thanks so much for the time. We're going to call it there right at about 15 minutes. If you want to get in touch with DeNovo Learning or with Seth at Blue Shark, you can find links and email addresses to reach us and him in the post that accompanies this video. Please join us again soon for another edition of the DeNovo Learning interview that should be announced shortly, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye-bye.